Well, hello there.
Hello again.
We're back for another edition of Jim and
Jonathan. Yeah, we should get a name for our program or something.
I think we should, but we are, we're back here live from the vineyards. It's another glorious day over the valley. I could say that one thing that COVID has done for us is really drop the pollution over the valley, and I am certainly enjoying that. We can.
It has been so clear and wonderful. Definitely,
yeah. It's another beautiful day. Clouds are out. It's not a hot day. I mean, it was hot, but not.
Yeah, I mean, but
doable.
This is kind of that's normal, and that's kind of what it's nice weather. It's good weather.
It's not the triple digits that we've been getting on Wednesdays for some reason. We've been showing up with our water-soaked bandanas and wet T-shirts, and
I always bring 2 T-shirts because otherwise that guy would have a hard time after I did 8 hours of work in the vineyards, and
Yep, and I'd have to stand a lot further.
It helps with the social distancing because you sort of have
I can't smell him. He can't smell me either. But anyways, well, welcome back. We're going to do a kind of a tour of the vineyards, kind of a virtual tour. We're going to talk about some of our techniques that we use in the vineyards and how that works in our winemaking process. We've got some tools of our trade here. Do have some nice breads that we've done. I've got a surprise in the oven that's simmering away. Jonathan wanted to peek. I told him I'm not going to let him look at that right now, but and I've got a couple of beautiful flank steaks that I have ready. I'm going to throw those in. In fact, I'm going to throw a little bit of. I think I'm going to throw a little bit of. I'm going to throw a little bit of Cabernet right on top of that because I like to do that as little Cabernet soaked. We're going to use a little Block 10.
Excellent choice. Excellent choice.
Yeah. So I'm going to let that soak in for a minute. Kind of run the salt down in there and get that seasoning. I'll throw those in a few minutes because I don't want to throw them in too early. Last week I kind of forgot about them, and it's hard to talk to you all and cook a piece of beef because and these are thin as you can see, and I want those just nice and rare as my amigo in Mendoza would call it, the living cow is what I want to come out. So it's been chilling. So today we're gonna work through a current the 2014 Cabernet. I brought out a 2008 Cabernet.
Oh wow!
So that was a great vintage.
It's 10 years before I started working here.
Yeah, there you go. That's nice. And then I brought some barrel samples of the wines that are in process. And I just ran to the cellar and I was looking over all the vintages, thinking, what's the closest vintage that I'm tasting now that kind of goes back in time, kind of comparing the 19 vintage to that. And I'm thinking kind of it's similar to the 8. The 8, it's got good fruit. It's got this these velvet textures. This was a very nice vintage, and 19 is beautiful. I'm really liking what I'm tasting, and so we'll kind of run through that. So, Jonathan, we've got some tools out here. I've got they're all tools that both you and I use back and forth.
Yeah.
Some of them we kind of go from very very crude.
What do you mean crude?
Crude.
I can use this with the precision of a scalpel.
Well, you can.
Particularly,
I'm going to show you how he does. In fact, I have a great photo of you and I took the photo, but he was doing the action, and it's got a vine literally leaping in the air as you prune that. Well, so we're going to show you some topping techniques and kind of what we're doing. But first and foremost, I hope every one of you out there has a glass of wine out there. Becky Becker, back from Michigan. Hi. Hello there. And I think my mom Fran is online, and
Angelica, my mother.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I asked her to send a picture, but she didn't. So maybe she might be asleep, or she might be working. Actually, she's a nurse. So
there is that profession, but
yeah.
And then thank you for all those that are taking care of the sick right now.
Yeah.
It's an important thing to do.
Right.
So
tools.
So we're gonna run through these wines. We're gonna talk about kind of how we get from, how we get from. They're probably a little bit out of order, but so how we get from crude to these refined tools. We got just your corkscrew, your waiter style corkscrew. I've got a wine thief that I use to pull wine out of the barrels that that I can fill these guys, and then all the way down to the Coravin, which is a pretty refined instrument. This is we're not being sponsored by Coravin. This is one product that will do it. Does it quite well. That if I don't want to open this bottle, it will certainly. I can take a glass out of this bottle, put it back in the cellar. It replaces the head space what I take out of there with argon, and it protects the wine, so there's no oxygen on it. And I've tested these several months. I've run tests on these, and I can come back 2 to 3 months later and find really no difference in those. So it's a pretty impressive product.
Yeah,
I don't get paid by Coravin, but it's a worthwhile investment if you're
tasting a lot of old wines or have a collection of
Yep.
old wines and you want to taste them every now and then. It's a really nice thing to have. Yeah.
Yep. And for me, sometimes I look at a bottle and I think I'd really like to taste that. But then
You open the whole bottle and then it's kind of sad because you're by yourself or something,
It's kind of, it's pretty hedonistic and wasteful.
Yeah.
And I'd like to taste that over time.
Talking like a real German. Yeah.
Yes.
However, one thing I always tell customers when I did a lot of wine tastings back in Germany when I was still in college, and there were a lot of old wines we tasted, and people always ask me, how long should you keep it, and so on and so on. And I always caution people and say, like, you may have this special bottle which you got on your wedding day, and now you've been married for 20 years or something like that. The sad truth is many wines just don't last quite as long. So at some point you should just find a good excuse, your next anniversary, your birthday, or I don't know, just open it, because nothing is sadder. And I've been there many, many times. At some point you open this very, very special bottle of wine and it's just brown water. I once had a bottle of a very, very well-known French chateau, 300 euros worth, and that was just brown water. And so
so wine is an evolution. Wine changes over time, and that's a great we didn't really plan this, but it's a great kind of a great segue into what we're going to talk about in the evolution of this wine. And it's kind of how I approach wine. And if I buy wine, I literally, if I find a wine that I want to cellar and I want to explore, and I think this is a cellar worthy wine, I will buy literally 2 cases of it, and at least a case, and then I will drink that over the process of the time. And so I might drink it 2 years or 3 years from now, and then see it, and it all of a sudden it gets into that drinking window, and where I'm really liking it. And you know what? That's the time to drink it. And so if you buy the one bottle, sometimes it can be pretty romantic when you buy the bottle, and it just depending on where it's at and the setting, and it could taste great. But it does. You're right. It can change over time.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I realize over time is that people don't really have cellars that they can, lay the wine back. So what we've done in our cellar, so I went to our library cellar, and if you're on, Aaron's going to be really mad at me for pulling out a bottle out of the cellar, but I always tell him,
Aaron,
I'm going to make more, Aaron, so don't worry. He kind of hoards the wine. he won't let me at it, but he's off resting his toe right now, and bless his heart, he had a little injury there. So Aaron, I hope you're doing okay, but we are cellaring back a significant amount of these wines so that we have them available for sale. And so that if you don't have that deep cellar, you can still enjoy these wines back. So, if you wanted to buy the 2008, you can. We have that for sale. And, so that's kind of a special thing that we've said, you know what? We have these decent sized cellars that we can keep these back. And I want to taste them. Certainly you want to taste them.
Yeah.
Well, and Dave's walking up.
Dave's
the path.
coming here in the back.
You may have seen him, but Dave wants to taste them too. So that's what we really want to do. So we do have these for sale. These cellared, these vintage wines all the way back to 2001. Now, Dave and I are going to get pretty stingy on those old vintages because we have a vault that it's only for him and I. But anyways, Dave, you want to jump in and
Sure.
say anything? So we're tasting through some of these wines. So
I see we got some bread here, huh?
yeah, and a special treat.
And an extra glass.
Yeah, an extra glass.
Yeah.
That's my glass, but I'll share with you.
Well,
It's,
okay.
you know,
Well, we can get
you know,
another glass.
Yeah. We're
What is
family.
this?
So that's the 2014 that I'm gonna pour you, but we're gonna work through some barrel samples. The cab. So that's kind of the first one. That's that's the wine that's available now. And if whatever you're drinking right now, I hope you have a glass of wine in front of you. I hope it's 5 o'clock somewhere. It's certainly 5 o'clock now here, and that you're enjoying a glass of House Family Vineyards wine. And give us a shout out if you're drinking a particular wine, you want to know something about it. Shout that out to us. So I got Becky. I'm sure she's drinking. So Becky was with Cora, her brand new puppy. She's drinking. What are you drinking, Becky? I don't know. You didn't tell me. You got your dog. So I don't know what you're drinking, but she has the library cellar right below her. So that's my sister-in-law who used to run the tasting room for us, and did a great job in building this family business. And I was just in there, in their cellar grabbing this bottle of wine. So, but we do have. So I'm gonna Coravin. I'm gonna show everybody how to use a Coravin and not open the whole bottle of wine, so that because we're gonna have to drink this whole bottle of wine tonight.
It's a dirty job. Somebody's got to do it.
I know it's that's the way it is, but this it's special, and you may not want to drink the whole thing tonight. So we're gonna kind of get through that. So anyway, so we are. I talked a little bit about the evolution, of this and kind of the rough tools that are on the table. So Jonathan, we're Dave, thanks for joining us.
You bet.
Bring you back in later for a little
Got
bit
you
of
a fresh glass.
Oh, look at that. Even though he parks a tractor in my kitchen.
We were talking about rough tools, so I mean.
So you got the roughest tool of all right there.
And still, when I drive down the rows, I have about 6 inches on each side with that thing, unless I kill vines, right? So I mean,
that's not acceptable.
You cannot. I mean, that may look like a rough tool, but driving that down those steep hills is an art, and surviving it and having the plant survive it is too. So
when we talk about the plants, it's really down to the vines, and these are really our children.
They are.
And somebody asked me the other day, "It's like, how'd you get into winemaking?" And it gets asked, quite often, and I often I don't have a great answer, but I thought about that, and I thought, why don't I have a great answer? And I think my answer really is that nobody takes care of your children like you will, and so these vines are my children. They're your children, and and so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the care, the nursery. You saw last week. The baby vines, and those are getting in the ground, so that was really exciting. The Sauvignon Blanc is in the ground, the Semillon is all in the ground, so it's that vineyard is now filled out, and so that's really nice. So, Jonathan, I want to talk about our children. Cheers.
I also want to talk about remember he said he always buys 2 cases when he finds a good wine. I think I should have a budget in my paycheck for something like that too, but we can talk about that later.
Negotiation.
He's always a little bit more accessible if there's like you guys
wants
watching.
Like 3 more of these tractors. So
no, I can do with 1 more and then a couple of attachments too.
See how this goes?
I saw something cool today on YouTube, which anyways. So rough tools. So we talked about the tractor. We talked about planting vines. That is happening right now, but sort of like the actual work in the vineyards.
So the vines right now are exploding. So every vineyard, June is probably the most beautiful month because the vines are as green as can be. And so what we did is we went through the vineyard. It's kind of a virtual tour in a way. It is
got
virtual.
You some pictures.
And so we have some pictures of what we did. So can we bring those up? Those pictures.
So
there we go.
This is up in block 10, which is not far away from here.
And we actually have
a sample from block 10.
Yep.
So block 10 is Cabernet, and until we make our final blend, the various blocks usually are kept separately during fermentation, and then also go separately into barrels. That's why we're able to pull barrel samples from various different blocks. And block 10 is definitely one of our older Cabernet Sauvignon blocks. The difference between block 10 and basically all the other blocks we have is the spacing between the vines is greater. The rows are 9 feet apart, and so the canopy is much thicker. And so what we're doing there is we are. This is a nice touch, Stephanie. We have that in the background. No, so we plucked some leaves there because the canopy is so thick that the grapes, the clusters, are literally completely hidden in the leaves. And so the second picture you see right now is me picking out some leaves there from only one side, so we don't make them completely exposed. Then we would have a risk of sunburn, but we're taking off one side of the leaves, so we get more sunlight on the grapes, we get more air circulation, which helps to prevent infections of funguses. And the higher exposure to sun helps it to build more anthocyanins, so we get a deeper color. But it also produces, it changes the profile of the tannins. So rather than having rather harsh and green tannins, you get softer, rounder tannins. As we said, we get a deeper color because basically those grapes, those vines, they produce the tannins as a sunblock, because they literally can get sunburned. If we pluck the leaves too radical or too harsh, then they can get sunburned. And so they produce the pigments in order to protect them. And then the other thing is
So I just want to go back to
Oh,
that. Can
sorry,
we go back one picture? So that was the same vine. So Jonathan, basically, I took
right.
Just a couple pictures. Now, you're German, you're efficient, and you work fast. But that was probably about a minute's worth of work. I was kind of watching that leaf plucking, and you'll notice that all of that very first picture, you couldn't see any grapes, and you think, well, yeah, it's real pretty, very lush. But now you can see these grapevines.
Yeah, so that was the first picture. Yeah.
And then you jump to that last picture, and all of a sudden it's completely exposed.
Yeah.
And so we've really worked with each of these vineyards, and each one of us a microclimate in itself.
Exactly. And so also not all the rows are sort of spaced in the same direction. So most of them run sort of roughly. We always go down the hill, but some are sort of northwest, north-south. Some are more east-west. And so you have to really think, how is the sun going around? When will we have sort of like the most heat? And that side we should then not pick, because then we have the risk of sunburn. Also, the timing of the picking is important. So this is rather early. The berries are about pea size. And in that stage, they're actually fairly hardy. And so if we pick them, if we expose them now, they will get used to the sun. And before we get those like really high temperatures in July and August, they'll have acclimatized to that high temperatures and sun irradiation. And so will come out harder with thicker skins, and so we get more flavors and more color. Whereas if you do it later, around veraison, so when they shift color from green to red, and you expose them then, it's much hotter in the year, and the risk for sunburn is much higher. So that's why we're doing it earlier this year.
So it's kind of like us, if you get that early tan in the late spring, early summer, versus if you don't get that tan and you go out in July and you just get absolutely burnt.
Exactly.
So it's very much the same thing.
Very similar, yeah.
And so the grapes, we're basically conditioning them for the hot climate, that's about to come.
Correct.
And really getting that texture and kind of that. Yeah. They're an endurance athlete, and we're just getting them ready to go.
Correct.
So we've got a couple. So that's kind of the leaf, the leaf plucking.
That is something. Basically, what happens at this time of year is generally canopy management.
Exactly.
And so that is one part of canopy management. The other part of canopy management, what we see in the next picture, Stephanie, So
these are so what I want you to notice is that that cloud in the background is going to be the exact cloud in the next picture, so it hasn't changed, and you can even see that cloud in the previous pictures from block 10. Not that we have to go back there, but these are right in block 1.
No. Go back to that first picture, to that picture before.
There we go.
Yeah. So this is in block 1. So everyone who has been here before has seen this vineyard. This is the vineyard right by the tasting room. So when you sit out at the deck, you look into this on this vineyard, and if you look a little bit further in the background, you see actually the valley and the Sierras in the background. And so you can see that the shoots have gotten very, very long. And so at this point, we start to top the shoots. So we cut them off, and that happens. So now we can switch to the camera here. That happens with those big lopers. So you see me cutting them there. And so that serves a couple of purposes. You can see here the big lopers. That's what we do. There are machines which can do it, but actually on those steep hills, this is honestly just faster, and it's not all that hard. And so we've been doing it manually, and we're going to continue doing it manually. So you don't have to buy another expensive machine.
I want you to notice the action photo on that vine just in the air from just the pure precision of this blunt tool that I so accused you of using.
Anyways. So what the topping does, it serves a couple of purposes. Obviously, it is, if those shoots would get longer and longer, we can go back on the camera, Seth. If those shoots would get longer and longer, they would at some point just start hanging down, create more shade on the vines. They would create a more humid climate under those overhanging shoots, more prone to fungus diseases. But the other physiological, very important signal we're sending by topping off those vines is, the vines, they're forest plants. They're usually in their natural habitat. They climb into trees and get up into the canopy of the trees and trying to get to the sunlight. And so they put a lot of energy in getting long shoots. And by cutting off those shoots, we send a signal to the plant and say, stop investing all that energy into shoot growth and put it instead into the grapes. And if we do that too early in the year, because you could make the case, why don't you just have like a very short canopy here in California? We sure had enough sunlight to still get grapes ripe with a short canopy. If you do it too early, so if we would have started doing that 2 weeks ago when we were still in full bloom, if they put all their energy into flowers, a lot of the flowers will not get pollinated and they'll just fall off because the vine thinks, the berries will get so thick, so I have to have less flowers, otherwise I cannot sustain all of them. So we wait with that until they're about shot or pea size, then we top them off. And so then we get all the energy into the grapes, but we will not lose any berries because the set has already happened.
Exactly. So it's really a balance. We're watching these day by day, week by week, and watching the development of the berries as they're on the vine, watching the weather forecast, whether we're getting a cool weather trend or a hot weather trend. And that's very important now moving forward with any kind of watering regimes or anything that we're going to do to really protect the grapes and do that, because it's really about, we're growing these to make wine. We're not growing these to, propagate the species. We are propagating the species, but the intent is to make this wine and really drive those grapes back in the bottle.
Right. And
so there's a lot of decisions that are made on a day by day basis based on weather, based on the time of year, and then it's a hurry up and let's get this process done.
And also based on the character of some vineyards. I know some vineyards, they're more exposed, they're hotter, or they're struggling more. Or, in our case, that's not quite as much the case. But, if I would have a Pinot vineyard and I would know this Pinot is going to become rosé, or this Pinot is becoming, like my premium Pinot Noir red wine, I would treat those two vineyards differently. And so also the style of wine in mind, it changes some of the decisions. With the reds, that's not so much the case, but we talked about the Sauv Blanc. And the Sauv Blanc, there the management will definitely reflect on the style of wine we want to make. This crispy, fresh white wine. So there we will, for instance, not pick any leaves because we want to shade those grapes more and give them these like fresher aromas. Whereas if we would expose them, we would get a rather bland, low acidity wine, which we don't really want.
No, but here in California, it's growing. We're not cold climate.
Yeah, we
We're
will
just
not get like a Marlboro New Zealand style.
New Zealand style that takes the acid, the enamel off your teeth. That's not what we're going for. It's more Bordelais, which overlays. It's the white, the white,
the white pendant to
exactly
our ribs.
to the Bordeaux that we're doing here. So let's taste through a couple of these.
Oh yeah, please.
So what I did is I brought, so the pictures that you saw today were from both Block 1 and Block 10. And then I also brought Block 4 or 5, which was this was kind of one of my favorites, and that was in those two big tanks, the 1,500.
Oh right, those
tanks,
new tanks. Yeah.
Boy, it just had some really fun aromas, and so I grabbed this kind of on a whim just to kind of taste through that, and then I want to get back to the micro pick and kind of bring it all back around to how we farm. So Stephanie, we talked about on the pictures how we really bring these all to fruition and work with all these grapes, and then Jonathan and I kind of give birth to these grapes in the vineyard, and there we are with our baby, the proud parents.
That picture, yeah.
Right
that
there
was
at the crush
last year,
pad
I guess.
These were the first grapes that you kind of brought into the world.
Yeah.
And so and they're definitely in here. So that was kind of a fun moment to bring you into the whole family aspect of that. That's this micro pick, and that's a testament of how we farm. And this micro pick it was a really fun way to do it. And when somebody, I kind of get back to the winemaking part of it. Somebody said, how'd you get into winemaking? And I finally got up and said, you know what? Nobody's going to treat these wines better than I am, and nobody's going to treat these grapes better than I am. And so I'm right here, every single day, and just babysit over these. These are my children, and that picture kind of shows that. We kind of wrap those grapes up, and so this micro pick, what it was is we used to pick grapes, a little more in bulk and a little. I don't want to say industrial, but it was a little rougher.
There was always a certain rationale about we have to get a whole block off the vines so we can ferment it together, because in the early days, way before my time, we didn't even make the wines here because we hadn't the facility.
Didn't have the facility.
And so the facility we used, they sort of demanded, bring, the bigger the better.
Right.
And so that was, so at some point you say like, okay, it's ripe enough. But the truth is you'll always have some which are very ripe already and some which are not quite there, particularly if we have very big blocks, which on the hillsides, on the top of the hillside, they will be very ripe. They'll start to raisin out. In the bottom, they're still kind of green. And so last year, what we did and said like, because we have the opportunity, let's do like a staggered pick. So we go through and say like, okay.
We called it a micro pick.
A micro pick,
so
exactly.
A small pick that we did.
And we went through, I went through and said to the pickers, I made marks and said like, pick, start at the top, go down to this particular plant, and from that one down on, you don't touch the grapes yet. Or I said, only pick the sunny side, the side, remember where we took off the leaves because they were riper than the other side. And so we were able to pick basically the grapes at their best.
Exactly.
And those which were not quite there yet got another week. And then we came back and picked those. And I think one block we came actually 3 times.
It was over about 3 weeks.
Yeah, and always got them at when they were just right, on point. If it was a steak, right? And that is something which big wineries usually cannot do. This is one of the perks you get with those small family-driven operations, where we can do these very fine-tuning things and really go in and pick almost like single berries at their top quality and then make wine out of them in very small batches. And so we basically get the most out of each cluster. And that is obviously something which is really nice when working in small businesses.
So this is akin to going to a farmer's market, looking over all the, maybe all the strawberry vendors or all the plum vendors, and just taste through everything and say, you know what, these are the best here, and that's what you take. That's what you can take home and eat. Right. So what we did is we walked these and said, okay, this is ripe now. And you talked about the green textures, or and how we leaf pluck and we pull the vines back for this. That's exactly why this happened. And our block 3, which is our biggest block, it's a 1.3 acres. And that block we literally pick in 3 segments. So we pick the top half, which gets the sun, first thing in the morning and last thing at night. We pick the middle, and then we pick the bottom. And that's one of the last things we pick. So in the cellar, I literally have barrels that'll say T3, M3, B3. And I know that it's top, middle, and bottom. And we wait until those grapes are ripe, because if I try to pick that whole block at once, I'm not going to get the best wine. I'm going to get some underripe. I'm going to get way overripe, and the middle is fine. But what
you will end up with is you get like a high alcohol wine which has a little bit of green reflections in it, because you have those super overripe berries in there, and you have those underripe berries in there too. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. And with those staggered micro pigs, we'll be able to, grab single clusters at their top ripening. And
so this is block 1. So this is right below, for those of you that have been here to the tasting room, right below the tasting room. It's got a beautiful, it's got one of the best views in the valley, I think.
Pretty much.
I think block 10 does, but it's just a matter of opinion. But right now it's a pretty stunning view. So this has got, I had the opportunity to taste these as I was pulling them out of barrels, so I kind of have a little, premonition of what it is. But this one, is more. It's a little more mineral core, a little bit less of the big red fruit that we'll taste in block 10. Block 10 really kind of gives a big punch of red ripe fruit.
Yeah.
But it's not that it's not present here.
No, but what I get very, very clearly. So as we said, we were still planting today. So, I washed my hands, I guess. But so today I had like a lot of. Somewhat is wet soil, because once we plant, we also obviously water the young vines right away. And so I had a couple of clumps of this like wet clay soil we have in our hands, and
it's really mineral. It's got
a
solid mineral core.
Yeah,
and that's what we do. We do the blending. So these are what we call a Bordeaux blend. So many of these will all work up until they get to graduate into this bottle. Or we'll do a Vintner's Reserve, which will be, typically
that's the valedictorian or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of the select barrels, and they're both different wines, and there's different vintages where they just do different things, and we kind of pick some of the barrels that are really showing through really nice characteristics, and it's kind of exemplify, and the other may work work well with another type of dish. So color's great, nice minerality, nice good fruit on it. But let's compare that to the block 10, and I think you're going to see some nice difference.
No, 19.
This is 19. This is all these are barrel samples from 19. 18 is all blended. 18 is going to go in the bottle. 18 will go. 18 is completely blended now. It's still sitting in barrels. We will probably bottle that towards August. So this is all 19 vintage wines that we're tasting here. 14 and 8. So we've got kind of a nice spread here. So this I get some of the sagebrush. Kind of the
color is already a little bit more towards.
Dave's on the outside over here with what he may be chasing.
Well, this is really a sophisticated cab. It doesn't have quite the amount of fruit in block 1, but it has got a real roundness to it. It starts off a little softer, really fills up your mouth. It has a really sophisticated finish. These are both going to be great when they age, and it's interesting. At this point, you get used to tasting wine when it's in process. It's not the finished product. This wine is only less than a year since it was on the vine, and it will continue to develop. And of course, we will wind up blending it with some Merlot and Cab Franc and Petit Verdot, and some other blocks to get the ultimate blend that we'll wind up having. But you can tell already this is going to be a very sophisticated wine.
Yeah, the tannins. So block 1, the tannins are a little more pronounced. The tannins are a little softer in block 10. On my palate, and so it's really nice to block 10 has always been it's our oldest block. It's a 1998 block, and it's
Usually one of our favorites.
Yep. I try not to be prejudiced to that, but it always kind of rises to the top. It's really nice. It's a stellar block.
22 years old.
Yeah. It's now really into its nice production, and it's certainly showing that now. So that'll come into that blend.
Absolutely.
We'll try the block 4 or 5 next. So all of these vines, all these wines, are obviously not available today, but both of these, the Cabernet, is there, and so is the library wines. So we have Silicon Valley Wineries shouting out. They can't wait to get back up here. We did open back up this week. That was, I can't tell you what a breath of fresh air it was to get back open. So our tasting room is open, but we are only open to wine club members at this point. We're doing reservation only. We're trying to keep it very controlled. Really nice, it's a spacious outdoor setting that we have here, and lots of breeze. Just trying to keep it safe and sane. And everybody that came up this weekend was just really happy to get out of the house, come out, get another view besides their 4 walls or their backyard. So it's it was really fun to get people back up here. It's not that I don't love the family, the crew and everything, and spending time, but it's just really fun to get the people back. I mean, that's why we do this. It's for you. We're growing these grapes. We're making this wine to really share, our special place on the planet. So we got a question that's coming in. It says, are all the estate cab blocks all cab bottles? So all the estate.
Yeah, there's all blocks. Usually,
Yeah.
I had to think about it too.
I think about the writing of that one.
Yeah.
Sorry, we did that live, but yes.
Yeah.
So the Cabernets are all going to be, if I'm understanding the question right, they're all in a claret style bottle, and whereas the Chardonnay would be in
No, that's not the question. The question is, for our Cabernet, in our Cabernet,
all the blocks.
you'll find some barrels of each block in the estate blend.
I misread the question. So. Yes. So all of them end up in this bottle in the blend, but we will do a Vintner's Reserve, or we will do our estate. So we started doing that several years ago, kind of pulling off the different select barrels. That's pretty typical in a lot of wineries. They do that. Some showing a little bit extra special, and it's a smaller portion of it. It's and it's. They're all my children, and is it better? It's different, and I love it. And it's just, it's got the right place on the table. So, all right, we're about ready to throw these steaks in here. So let's get, we're going to try another one. So it's block 4 or 5. So this is a combination of block 4 and 5. And that is it was one of those blocks that I said kind of took me by surprise. when it got in the tank, I was really enjoying the punch downs on this and the aromas that were coming out of it. So the two blocks, 4 and 5, they're right next to each other. Block 4 is a pretty small block, and typically not a producer, but this year it really produced some, phenomenal, like really kind of fruit forward, powerful wines. And Block 5 is always a great producer. It's combined with our Chardonnay, on the other side. But these two blocks kind of come together, divided by one road, but they do taste different. But they came off at the same time because of the ripening. We picked them, and that was 4 or 5. I poured 3.
Oh shoot, sorry.
He just wait. Did you see that? I poured him a fresh glass of wine, and he pours it out.
I make this stuff.
Drives the tractor into the kitchen, pours out great wine. I don't know. Brings blunt tools to the table.
They're all sharp.
Well, they are that, and he uses them quickly.
Exactly.
So this is where it gets tough, because all of this is grown right here on the mountaintop, and we're really looking for the micro differences between literally a dirt road and and just a little bit of exposure around a corner, and I was gonna say, most people really don't understand where our vineyards are, and they're down below the tasting room, so they don't get the ability to see that. We'll have to get some drone pictures, kind of fly over that. I think would be really spectacular. And when you go down into it, this is personally one of my favorite times of the year, is going down in the evening time and really kind of, going through when it's quiet. The crew is gone, and kind of looking through everything, kind of watching everything grow, and kind of watching the nursery, watching the everything develop, the vines develop, and it's really a fun time of year, just watching that, the development there. So what do you get now?
I mean, they're all just divided by a little bit of dirt road, but all these 3 wines. So we had Block 1, which we had Block 10, and we have now 4, 5, and they're all very distinctive, I think. Remember Block 1? We said I got this like wet clay, which I smelled earlier today when we were planting. Block 10, very pronounced to me, had a violet flavor, like violet. What's that word in English when they sugar coated,
crystallizer.
Crystallizer, yes.
Well, you made a comment earlier when we were walking through the vines, and now we're smelling it so much that I'm kind of used to the aromas. Yeah. You said, "Oh, you smell that? Yeah, smell of it, the flowering and everything." But you can smell that in the
You can smell that too.
Yeah.
But so in Block 10, the wine before, I really got like this violet flower smell, which was really nice. And so here in 4-5, again, very different, much more, a little bit more on the leather, dark spices side.
Starting to get some baking spice, in there, because some of the deeper, darker texture. So these vineyards are less, so they get less sun in the morning, less sun in the afternoon. So a little bit, I don't want to say cold climate, but they're cooler than both Block 1 and Block 10, because both of those are up high. Yeah. So those are going to be much more, ripe fruit. This gets that core, that Bordelaise core that really gives you that.
4 and 5 also have a lot more water compared to the other two, because they're further down the hill.
Drains down and punches out.
So there's more vigor in those blocks. They are probably from, together with Block 10, the most even blocks. So we have like very even growth throughout the Block 4 in particular. 4 is also one of the smaller blocks, so it's easy in that regard. But they're very even in ripening and have very similar soil conditions in terms of water and heat and light throughout the block.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on to the micro pick, and that was kind of there's 2 barrels of this micro pick. So I did these small fermentations with the grapes that came in. So this is a combination of both barrels. So it's kind of fun to come back and taste these, because this is both Block 1 and Block 10. At those upper picks. So
And that was the first
these are
micro pick.
these are the first micro picks that we did. So
Okay.
I'm gonna throw these steaks in, and then I'm gonna show you guys how to core in a wine as we taste through this. So I've got these.
Can we switch to the other camera? Oh,
these,
look at
these
those.
flank steaks. So drop these in and keep that to the window there a little bit.
So you're going on the bare ground in the oven.
Yep.
Okay.
Right there, direct contact.
Yeah. Well, as we say in Germany, Dreck reinigt den Magen, dirt cleans the stomach. So,
There it is. So here's to the first micro pick.
here's to the first micro
Yeah.
pick.
Much different than the other two. I mean, all four wines are so different. You know, the immediately I get, you know, the kind of the tannin blend really sets this off. But the fruit and the ripeness of that, you know, there's a nice complexity already.
Yeah.
That, you know, not that these won't have that complexity, but because it's a blend of two blocks already, I'm getting kind of this, you know, this driver that kind of works between the two, where these are more singular, and that's why we blend the wines.
Correct. Yeah. So
in there.
just you know, and we're not really blending like crazy things. You know, it's all grown here on the estate. Most blends are mostly between different blocks of the same variety, and then because you know, that's an old tradition from the Bordeaux region, is to also, you know, if you have Cab, you also mix a little bit of Cabernet Franc and Merlot and Petit Verdot in, because in France, you know, they don't really care about the varieties, and for a long time, people even didn't really know that there were different varieties. I mean, yes, you could obviously distinguish red and white, but there are Merlot and Cab. If you look at the plants, they look very, very similar. It's very hard to tell them apart. And so for many centuries, probably what happened, they just planted different varieties in the same vineyard, and they made those blends actually in the vineyards already, by just having
a field blend.
a field blend,
Yeah, exactly.
having like Cab and Merlot plants in the same vineyard, and they didn't know or they didn't care, and they harvested them all together, and that was the blend. Now we know better, so we can plant them apart and take care of them each individually because they have a little bit different needs, but we still like to combine them later together because, as in many other parts, the sum of the parts is greater as or the what is it, what how is it saying go? The sum
Some parts is better than the single. Well, I liken it to a band. So you know, if you can play one instrument, you know, you may like that instrument, but you don't want to listen to it all night long. But if you put four players together,
yeah,
it sounds so much better, and it's there's better harmonies between them. And this is already showing that those harmonies that are going to come out in the 2019 vintage, which you won't get to drink for probably 5 to 6 years now. So this is a little teaser into the future, but let's jump into the past.
yes.
So,
oh yeah.
So I've got a Corbin. I've got the 2008, and I don't want to open this whole bottle of wine. Well, I actually do, but I won't.
Between you and I, we could tackle
do that. So this has a nice little clip, and this right here is a needle. It's like a syringe style needle, and inside is a
maybe we switch to the little camera, and then we can see that close up.
Argon capsule. There we go. So I've got an argon capsule here that's inside of that's threaded inside here.
Yeah, and then the needle, as you can see here, maybe come just a touch closer here.
So am I on? All right. So then I'm gonna grab this here. I'm gonna hold here, and I'm gonna insert the needle down into the wine. And one thing I didn't show you is before I purged this with a little bit of air, so I didn't put any oxygen back in there.
Yeah.
So it was, it's important because
purge it with a little bit of argon out of the.
Yeah. I purged the cartridge so that it drives the argon into there, and then I'm gonna bring that over. I'm gonna turn it over. I'm gonna press here, and it's putting the argon in the bottle. And when I release, it's going to drive the wine out of the bottle. And what's happening is argon is going back into that.
It replaces
glass.
the
So there's
wine
no
with
oxygen
argon
going in there, so that you may be able to see just enough. If turn around, come around this way so we get sunlight on there.
Yeah,
and you see that I've taken wine out of the bottle, but what's replaced there is argon, so it won't.
There's also Stephanie there. Hi, Stephanie.
It's an inert gas. It's not oxygen, so it won't ice the wine and destroy the wine. So
did you guys hear that? She chuckled. I made her laugh while drinking, so I want her back.
Uh-oh. So I got to get some of this in my glass here.
How are the steaks doing?
All right. So I think we're about ready to flip these. All right. These are doing all right. And so now I'm going to, well, we should probably taste this. I didn't do this justice.
Yeah.
So it's got that leather component that we got out of block 4 and 5. That's showing. I mean, this is a 12-year-old wine here.
Yeah.
Definitely showing. It's still showing a lot of fruit. If you.
What I definitely get is how do you call that in English? It's if you roast an apple with cinnamon and brown sugar, sort of like as a Christmas
caramelization. Caramelized sugar and spice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there's still, and that's interesting. The spices and the caramel, that's kind of what we expect but I definitely also get the apple. I have like a ripe apple, but caramelized with cloves and cinnamon.
So it's a lot of those baking spices that I get in walking around the property. That's one of the flavors, kind of the characteristics that I taste on a regular basis. So I did. So these are some San Marzano
tomatoes.
Done with a little
red wine.
Well, there's a little wine in there, but onions and garlic. And so it's kind of a dipping sauce for the bread. So that's what we're going to tear into here in a minute.
You guys can see that? Yum, yum, yum. Oh, and there's the bread.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that.
That's kind of what this is. Kind of this.
The next time I'm thinking like I may bring my sourdough starter and bake some sourdough bread.
I just started some sourdough starter yesterday.
Oh,
and, it's amazing how active it is. Being at the winery here. So it's all about life and fermentation. And so I hope you've enjoyed the life cycle of what we do here, from the baby vines last week, to planting those, to all the care and the decisions we make on a daily basis, to the pruning and the aspects that we want to really make these things into the best wine possible, all the way down to the micro picks that we do. It's a labor of love. We do it. I can't think of anything more fun.
No, that's true. And so the sort of like the motto both Jim and I work after is, how can we make a better wine today? And
and you know what?
We strive for that.
Yep. And so, if you're enjoying our wine today and enjoying the history about it, we've made a better glass of wine. We know that we were in the vineyard. I was in the cellar. So it's back and forth. So, here's to a better glass of wine.
Better glass of wine.
Cheers out there.